Stand by to initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5.
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2. 1. Mark.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark, a.k.a. Derringer. Today is Sunday, August 12th, and you are listening to episode 169 of the Instant Action Podcast, your weekly source for Planetside 2 news and information. As always, I'm brought to you by great listeners like you via the Support the Show tab on instantactionpodcast.com. Speaking of that Support the Show tab, I just want to remind everybody, if you missed the last segment of last week's show, that all donations coming into the show throughout the month of August are going to be donated in the name of Ripple in his charity of choice. Because, of course, as we learned last week, he had passed away, unfortunately. So, again, go and use my Amazon link. You should be using it anyways. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything and helps out the show. But in this case, go use my Amazon link, buy your stuff as normal, and any money that Amazon is going to send me at the end of the month, like I said, I'm going to use it directly to support this charity. And definitely some of you out there are using it, and I certainly do appreciate that. I mean, we're only 12 days into the month. I mean, technically it'll only be 11 when I look at the reports and everything. But there's a little bit coming in there. It looks like $10, $11 so far. Plus, I did get a donation via PayPal from Florian, Setflow, sorry. I do want to thank you for that donation that you made. He made a small donation as well that I will be lumping together with the other one and that I have so far. So again, if you wanted to make a donation to support Ripple's charity, you can do so via PayPal. You can do so via my Amazon link. Also, if you're a member of Patreon, subscribe to my show via Patreon. Any money that I did receive in the month of August is going to go there as well. As it stands right now, we're around $50 or so that I'm going to make a donation of, which it's not a ton, but it's certainly not small either. So I do appreciate everyone who has so far gone and either made a donation, Setflow, you via PayPal, or if people have been using my Amazon link, or obviously my normal monthly subscribers over there on Patreon. Again, this will run throughout the end of the month, so any money that does come in, I'm going to make that donation beginning first week in September. Other than that, it's just been a normal week here. We're kind of down to the final run through. My daughter actually goes to college on the 19th of August. So if you look at your calendar, that's a week away from when I'm recording this week's show. I'll actually have to record next week's show probably on the Saturday because we will be quite busy next Sunday with getting her all packed up and heading on out to UNH and going from there. If anybody's going to UNH, feel free to reach out to me. Maybe I'll send some dog tags along with my daughter, and if she can find you and whatnot, we can certainly go from there. So yeah, other than that, it's just been the normal Planetside 2 stuff. Plus, I'm sure everybody's aware by now that the next World of Warcraft game drops on Monday, the 13th. I am going to be playing the hell out of that. I've already purchased it. I'm already ready to go. So it's probably going to eat into a little bit of my Planetside 2 time next week, but that's okay. I can juggle both these certain things. But other than that, played my fair share of Planetside 2 this week. Not as much as I wanted to, but certainly enough to know that the community is still going strong, even though we've seen people posting things about the community dropping again through the month of August, which I always say, every time somebody posts something saying the community is dying in the summer, it's the summer that is happening, not so much that people are dying or the game's dying or people are leaving the game. I'm still able to log in every night and find huge fights if I want to find huge fights. Sure, maybe they stink some nights and it forces people to go and play other games because they're not happy with the fights that are going on. I'm looking at you, joke members, but it is what it is. I really think that it's the summer dip that we're seeing. People are going and doing other things. People are outside. People are doing other things rather than Planetside 2 is really what it comes down to. And I don't think that the game is dying. And I'm going to reference a YouTube video about that later on in the show. But speaking of that, what's in store for this week's show? Well, first I want to talk about the August 7th PC client updates that rolled out and whether they actually fixed anything or not. After that, I want to talk about the stealth implant changes that appeared on the PTS. Then I'm going to switch over to YouTube, and I want to talk about SergeantMerrel's newest video about Planetside 2 that I just hinted about. And finally, I'm going to talk about the developer team and read some listener email. So strap in as we hot drop into another episode of the Instant Action Podcast. As I said, first up this week is the August 7th PC client update. I think August 7th is the right date. That's kind of when I remember logging in and updating it, because there's no official patch notes regarding this client update because it was client side only. No other changes. And well, let me read exactly what Nick wrote. And Nick wrote that this update was almost purely UI system cleanup that should prevent memory leaking as well as some hitching. So again, this was something that just got pushed onto live as a client update. There was no downtime regarding it. You had to restart your client in order for it to actually take effect in-game. So if you were experiencing hitching on the 7th still, a log out and a log back in was the plan to kind of fix it. So for me, did I see any changes after this? And unfortunately, no. I'm still receiving hitching after this update. And it's just that, I say hitching, it's just a micro stutter is the better way for me to continue to describe it. I'm playing, I'll kill somebody, and then there'll just be that tiny momentary freeze where the game just, you can see it on the screen. It just pauses. I don't know why it's pausing or what it's actually doing, but then it flies right back in and everything's back to normal. But that micro freeze is just so utterly brain breaking, I guess. I mean, for me, it just throws my concentration right off when that certainly happens. And it's awful to play through. Absolutely awful to play through. I expect a completely smooth game experience every time I play Planetside 2. And this is certainly continuing to screw with that and make me upset whenever I log into Planetside 2 and that pops up. Now, Roxley also commented on these and said that it's a small hotfix intended to fix a couple of performance issues related specifically to the game UI. It's not really the quote-unquote performance patch that was targeted to fix the brunt of our recent issues. We are still aware that they are ongoing and still working on them. This was just a little step taken to make a couple quick changes. So clearly, like I said, this wasn't pushed out to fix everybody's system issues or the full performance patch that they've been talking about for a couple weeks at this particular point. But again, unfortunately, it didn't fix my specific issues that I'm having in game, and I don't know what's causing these certain things. Roxley did go on further to say that don't worry, we've got a lot of changes we're working towards that should help resolve this. So note that at least this says to me that this is only the first step of perhaps many, or the tip of the iceberg as it was of performance updates that they're going to be throwing at us throughout the month of August, or maybe in the next few weeks or whatnot, to fix all these various issues that we're certainly having. So again, even though this little client update didn't fix the issues that I was having in game, it's good to know that this wasn't the only thing that they're pushing out there, and that hopefully we'll see some more stuff sooner rather than later. Now, of course, this client update didn't not only, it wouldn't be, some people would say it wouldn't be Daybreak Games if they didn't break something, because Nick's commented that he's getting reports that people are still experiencing hitching when you die in vehicles specifically, wanted more info, and other people said, yeah, this client update was great, except now that I can't see out of my cockpit when I'm flying an aircraft, and so they had to issue another client update to fix the cockpit issue. Basically, the cockpit was no longer opaque, and you couldn't see how to, or cockpit was fully opaque and you couldn't see out of it, which was kind of annoying if you had to play through that. But that's been certainly fixed as well. So if you didn't play when this update first came out, you didn't even notice this because it got fixed pretty quickly. But again, just the overall thing to take from this is that this was only the first thing that they're putting in place. And clearly it seems like it was just some low-hanging fruit that they could throw out there without impacting much, and that they have more stuff on the way. Fingers crossed that more stuff comes out this week because, again, it's still very annoying to play with these micro hitches. And with that, let's move on to our second topic this week. And that second topic is about some implants that were stealth added or changed on the PTS with no patch notes. So first off, the two ones are Fortify, which was added, which wasn't out there, and Paratrooper, which got a pretty decent rework that we weren't expecting to see. And again, no patch notes, no nothing. These were just kind of dropped out there, and people actually discovered them. So first, let's talk about Fortify. Fortify is an interesting one, and my initial thought is that I'm worried about how this is going to affect gameplay, and especially point control and stuff like that. So first, let me read it before I go too in-depth into it. So for Fortify, when you're interacting with a control point, it will increase your maximum shield health by 100 at rank 1, 120 at rank 2, 150 at rank 3, 200 at rank 4, and also 200 at rank 5 for 15 seconds. If any allies within 8 meters also have Fortify equipped, they also receive this buff at their Fortify implant level. Additionally, if you are rank 5 in Fortify, your shields regenerate 13.33 health per second for the duration of the buff. Now, at any rank, there is a 15-second cooldown between interactions. So basically, we do know that in order for this to happen, you need to interact with a control point. And that means you need to walk up to the control point itself and hold down your E key in order to interact with it. And like it says, that there is a 15-second cooldown between interactions. So what's going to happen is you're going to walk up to the control point, you're going to hold down E, it's going to activate, it's going to last 15 seconds, and then there's going to be 15 seconds between where you cannot activate it anymore. Now, let's talk about how this is actually going to affect heavy assault players, because if you're using it with resist shields plus an auxiliary shield potentially, you could have a total of 1,923 effective hit points. If you own Esamir, it could be even more than that. That seems kind of excessive and kind of almost unfair. And I mean, if you've ever watched videos by, I'm just going to use the outfit B-Way as an example. This Bushido Way, in case you were curious. B-Way, who I've played with a bunch of times. I like the guys in B-Way, and they love to do point holds against overwhelming forces. So they're just a handful of guys in there, maybe a squad or less, holding off against platoons or more, and they post a lot of videos doing it, and they're good at it. And I'm worried that a implant like Fortify is going to make them even better at doing something like this, because they just really have to have one person with Fortify stand next to the capture point and then continuously press their E key whenever the cooldown runs out. And then if everybody else around them is also using the Fortify implant, that one person can keep them in not 100% uptime, but after cooldown with 100% uptime. And that's just going to increase their hit points. If they've all got it maxed out to rank 5, it's going to increase their shield regeneration. It's really going to be an interesting implant or an OP implant on an outfit or a group of players who really know how to maximize its uptime and basically how it works within the game itself. And I'm a little concerned about that right now. Now, I talk about this and say that I'm concerned about it, but we all know that this is something that was just put out there. It's on the PTS. It's not something that's on live, and obviously could get reworked between now and when it actually goes live. So again, just my initial thoughts on this is it's a little OP at this current point, but perhaps we'll see some sort of change to it before it actually goes to live. I can imagine, like I said, the folks up in B-Way are probably pretty excited about this, potentially coming to live and playing around with this. Enough about Fortify, let's talk about Paratrooper. So Paratrooper got some changes within the game itself. So now, not in the game, on PTS. Now, whenever you receive damage, at rank 1, 2%, rank 2, 3%, rank 3, 4%, and rank 4, 5% of your jump jet fuel is restored. Also, at your final rank, when reloading your tool slot, it will reduce the damage taken from targets directly below you by 20% for 3 seconds. And this is only usable by light assaults. And also worth noting that this does not work with ambusher jump jets. So, what does this really do in reloading your tool slot? Obviously, the tool slot on a light assault is your rocklet launcher. So if you're reloading that, you're going to take less damage at rank 5 for 3 seconds when targets are directly below you. What does Paratrooper really do? It's just kind of a reworking. I don't think that there's too much to it. It's certainly not as interesting into the game as Fortify is. Paratrooper just kind of is as it is, and we'll go from there. Rank 5 is kind of interesting. I kind of like the addition of that to reduce that damage. Could be something that good light assault players can definitely work with. But again, those are the two things that were kind of stealth added or quote-unquote fixed on the PTS. It would be nice if we actually had gotten a little alert that this stuff went live so people could actually get out there and test this a little more without having some other players in the game kind of bring this to everybody's attention. But I'd rather see them throwing stuff out there and getting it to test before it comes to live rather than nothing coming out there at all. But that takes care of topic number 2, and let's move on to this week's Veteran's Voice.
Pulling the trigger and making things go daka 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 is what the mighty Terran Republic loves the most. I've seen the same joy in the faces of the NC and Vanu soldiers right before the bullet from my sniper rifle goes through their thick, traitorous skulls. This love of trigger pulling, however, is probably the cause of most of your random deaths. To pew or not to pew, that is the question. 'Tis nobler in the minds of veterans to hold fire more often than not. If you don't have a hope of killing what you're shooting at, don't shoot. Firing your weapon not only makes a lovely noise that enemies can hear for about 1 kilometer, but will highlight you on the minimap and make bright faction-colored tracers appear. If you manage to hit someone, they'll even get a damage indicator telling them what direction to be angry at. Knowledge is power, and if they're not shooting at you, chances are they don't know that you're there yet. Lots of weapons do diddly squat to a vehicle, but make noise and alert them to your squishy, cert-filled meat sack being ripe for harvest. There are plenty of things to shoot without you needing to piss off some Liberator duo with your beamer, or trying to pick off that infill across the base with your pump shotgun. Trigger discipline is one of the great underutilized skills. Remember, the only difference between a scrub lord and a Superman is learning from your mistakes. Stay frosty, soldiers.
Okay, our third topic this week, like I said at the beginning of the show, we're going to move on to YouTube at this point because earlier this week, YouTuber SergeantMerrel, who used to do a lot of YouTube videos in the past, or maybe not a lot of YouTube videos, but definitely did YouTube videos in the past, and we're talking over 3 years ago, put out a new video about Planetside 2 asking the question, is Planetside 2 dead? And that he was returning to the game after 3 years. And really the big, I mean, he plays the game for a little while before he actually gives the answer, but does give the answer. And his opinion is something that echoes my opinion of the game itself. And that Planetside 2 is not dead. And it's not going to be a game that's dead for a while now. Sure, people can come and go. They can be upset at performance issues right now, which I think a lot of players are, and there are definitely players taking a break from the game because of performance issues. But I don't believe that the game itself is dead. I agree with what Sergeant Merrel says 100%. Planetside 2 is not dead. More so, what I think the best part of his video itself is, and it's just his normal gameplay. He's, your normal Planetside 2 player, is that he talks about, it's around the 3-minute, 30-second mark, he starts going into it, how he can spend days talking about what's wrong with Planetside 2, but more so he wanted to focus on what he enjoys about Planetside 2. And he specifically says something along the lines of, I didn't transcribe it, I apologize. And Sergeant Merrel, if you listen to this, I'm not doing a direct quote of you, I'm just kind of regurgitating what you said, so I apologize in advance. He said basically something along the lines of, there will always be another Battlefield game. There will always be another Call of Duty game. There will always be another Battle Royale game, which is the flavor of the month right now. There will always be some sort of other arena combat game, like League of Legends or something along those lines. But there is no other Planetside 2 out there. There's no other game currently. There's no other game in the past, because Planetside 1 doesn't exist anymore. And there's no other game in the near future that is going to do or going to bring to the table what Planetside 2 has brought to the table. Your massively multiplayer online game with all kinds of different activities within the game itself. You've got your construction in the game. You've got your air combat in the game. You've got your vehicle combat in the game. You've got your infantry combat in the game. This is all, and on a massive scale that other games cannot do. There's a reason Planetside 2 has the Guinness World Record of number of players playing the game at the exact same time on one server. It's because they're the only game out there that can do something like that. And for that reason alone, after 6 years of life, Planetside 2 is not dead. And again, Sergeant Merrel distilled that down perfectly in this particular video. And I'm glad that he made a video like this saying stuff like that, because I think there's too many people out there that are always chirping that Planetside 2 is a quote-unquote dead game. It's not a dead game. I can log in every night. I can find fights. Maybe Briggs might be the only exception to this, but every other server out there, even the PlayStation 4 servers out there, you can log in any night and you can find fights and you can continue to play and you can have a good time. Off hours, maybe not so much, but peak hours, you definitely can get into Planetside 2, have a good time, find fights that you want to fight, and play the game that you want to play within Planetside 2. So, again, thank you. This is more than anything just a shout out to Sergeant Merrel. And I wish more YouTubers who played Planetside 2 in the past would come back, do a quick returning to the game video, and post how, even though they've been gone for a number of years, when they come back, they see the game isn't dead and it's still playing. People are still playing the game. People are still having a good time playing the game. So again, more than anything, this is just a shout out to Sergeant Merrel. Thanks for putting this video out, and I wish more YouTubers would do something along this lines. With that, let's move on to our fourth and final topic this week before we get to some listener email. And the fourth topic is about the current developer group. Recently, they posted a team picture up on Facebook with a big map of Indar behind them. But the interesting thing about this is in the photo, there are only 7 people. And when we look at them, I think I've identified most of them. I mean, the back row, left to right, we've got Paul, you got Matt, you got Garrett, you got Zach, and you got Nick. In the front row, left to the right, you've got Roxley, you've got Drew, you've got Rel, and you've got one person that I don't know who it is. I mean, potentially the only person I can think of that's not accounted for that works on Planetside 2 or plays Planetside 2, Prompt Critical, but I don't know if he would actually be in that picture or not. So there's one mystery person in the picture who I don't know actually who it is, and that's my bad for not knowing these things. I like to think that I know exactly what's going on with the developer team of Planetside 2. But I think the biggest takeaway from this picture itself is that the developer team is pretty small when you actually come to think of it. And, there's only 7 people in it, which kind of did I say 7? I think there's 8 or 9. Actually, yeah, 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 9 people. I'm sorry, not 7 people. There's only 9 people within the intimate developer team. Now, Roxley did post out that we've got a number of other people that we work with regularly and that help support the game. Teams are pretty flexible here, and people will often work on more than one project. She says, I'm on 3 right now and still help out other game teams when they need it. These are just some of the more familiar / core individuals. Still, having only 9 people in the group is just kind of interesting. With a game that I think as big as Planetside 2 is, I'm surprised that there aren't more core people working on it. But then we all know that they've kind of pared down over the life of this game to get kind of where they are right now. I enjoyed looking at the picture, though. I mean, it's good to put actual faces to a lot of these names. If you looked at my April Fool's show that I did not too long ago with my cruise ship photo, that I actually had just about everybody who's in this photo in that picture as well. So, we've had this basic core team now since at least April at this point, where all these various people are on them. And it was good to get a picture with people like Drew in it and people like Garrett and Zach in it, who are some of the newer folks that are actually working on Planetside 2 that are in this and still are considered members of the core group. But again, the biggest takeaway is that it was only 9 people. And I kind of wish that this game made more money than it does currently to allow them to add even more people to the team to continue to work on stuff like that. But again, this is just kind of my last little throwaway topic because it was just kind of more interesting than anything else. But with that, let's move on to our mailbag this week because, like I said, I do have some listener email.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Come back later, please.
Housekeeping.
Not now.
Housekeeping.
Go away.
I coming anyway?
And that email this week is from old standby Louie, and Louie writes, Hey Mark, glad to see a base building directive come into the game. Now keep the base building love coming. They need to work it into the implant and ASP systems. Here are some of my ideas. For implants, maybe an increased cordium mining and depositing implants. How about an implant that increases your resistance when placing and purchasing items or allows you to cloak while doing it? How about an implant that allows you to drive away with your ant from a cordium node or your silo while both extracting or depositing? This would be good because it's still an exploit they can't seem to fix, and you might as well make it fair to players who do not want to exploit. As for ASP, how about a reduced residual drain on your silo? And in parentheses, he writes, OMG please, ! Maybe reduced construction item costs, maybe increased orbital flail and glaive radius, maybe increased spawn range of the router, and finally, maybe increased radius of pane spires. That's about all I can think of for now, but I do also want to beg one more time to the devs listening out there, let me lock my freaking silo. Louie. Louie, first off, thanks for your email as always. I like most of your implant ideas. Why not have an increased mining and depositing implant for cordium? That just makes sense. I like your idea for the implant as well to kind of break the exploit, except that one kind of makes me think that if people are able to exploit it, why would they even bother adding the implant when they can just exploit it anyways? As for your ASP items, I think all those ASP items are great. If I was the devs, I'd think about considering running with them right now. 5 different things, it could be perfect under construction. Why wouldn't it be there? And also being able to lock your silo. I'm still upset that they took that away and haven't given that back because it's still a problem within the game itself. All great ideas, and I hope the devs listen to them and actually think about them. I should forward this on to Drew. He'd probably like to do this. Maybe I'll give him a heads up, make sure he listens to this week's show. Well, that is going to be it for this week's show. How can you get in touch with me or the show itself? As always, your first stop should be to visit my website, www.instantactionpodcast.com. There you will find links to every week's show, all the past shows, but more importantly, all those links that you can make a donation so that I can give as much money as possible to Ripple's charity. After that, you can email me like Louie did, instantactionshow@gmail.com. You can call me, leave me a voicemail, 347-4VM-4PS2. Those digits are 347-486-4772. Please follow me on Twitter. The show is at Instact Podcast. I am at The Derringer. But in closing, if you've enjoyed the show, please leave me a review on your podcast listening avenue of choice, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere else. Also, feel free to tell your friends and outfit mates about the show. And finally, thanks for listening, and keep spamming that Join Combat, formerly known as Instant Action button.
Get your arms combined.